All right, let's dive into the absolute engine of the modern AI revolution, the GPU. Today, we're going to uncover how unlocking its incredible speed isn't just about cramming in thousands of cores. Turns out, it's about playing by a set of hidden rules, rules that are written directly into the hardware itself.
So let's kick things off with a pretty fundamental question. For decades, right, we could just sit back, wait for the next chip to come out, and poof, our software would magically run faster. But that whole era is over. We literally hit a wall, the physical limits of how fast you can run a single processor core before it, well, starts to melt. The answer wasn't to build one faster worker, it was to build an entire army. And this right here is the perfect way to think about the difference between a CPU and a GPU. Your CPU is like a specialist, a single, brilliant surgeon who can solve incredibly complex problems, but only one at a time. The GPU, on the other hand, is an army. We're talking thousands of simpler soldiers, all tackling a huge repetitive task at the exact same moment. This is the very heart of parallel computing. But here's the thing, commanding this army is not as simple as it sounds. You can't just toss a problem over to a GPU and expect it to be fast. Nope. To really win the game of speed, you have to play by the hardware's rules. Think of these rules as the secret language between your code and the silicon chip itself. Okay, so the first and honestly the most important rule is all about something called the warp. A warp is a group of exactly 32 threads, and it's the most basic unit of work on a GPU. Now the key is that these threads operate in perfect absolute lockstep. Imagine a drill sergeant shouting one single command and all 32 soldiers execute it at the exact same instant. That is a warp. The official name for this is single instruction multiple threads, or SIMT, and it is insanely efficient, as long as everybody is doing the exact same thing.
But what happens when they're not? Well, that brings us to the first major performance killer, warp divergence. This happens when threads inside the same warp need to go down different paths, like in a simple if-else statement in your code. Suddenly, our drill sergeant has a problem. He has to shout the if command while half the soldiers just stand there waiting. Then he has to shout the else command while the other half waits. The whole army just grinds to a halt. The big takeaway here is this. Efficient GPU code avoids, at all costs, making threads in the same warp disagree.
The next set of rules, it's all about location, location, location. See, on a GPU, data isn't all stored in one big pile. You've got your registers, which are like tools sitting right there on your workbench. They are ridiculously fast. Then there's shared memory, which is kind of like a supply closet down the hall. It's still pretty fast, but already about 100 times slower than your registers. And finally, you have global memory. This is like a giant warehouse across town. It's huge, but it is painfully slow to get to. The entire game of optimizing for GPUs is about one thing, minimizing trips to that warehouse. Now, even that supply closet down the hall has its own tricky traffic rules. Shared memory is actually divided into 32 separate shelves, or banks. A bank conflict is what happens when multiple threads in the same warp all try to grab something from the exact same shelf at the exact same time. It creates a massive traffic jam, and the hardware forces them to go one by one. So not only do you have to be smart enough to use the fast supply closet, you have to make sure your 32 workers aren't all crowding around the same shelf. Okay. Theory is great, but let's see how these rules actually crash into each other in the real world. We're going to follow the story of a deceptively simple algorithm called parallel reduction. All that really means is summing up all the numbers in a massive array. And this one little task is going to force us to deal with every single one of the rules we just talked about. So the first totally naive attempt to write this code is frankly a disaster. It creates just massive warp divergence. Our soldiers are constantly disagreeing and waiting around. The first fix is to restructure the code, to cleverly group all the active threads together. But of course, solving one problem just creates another. Now we have a giant bank conflict, a traffic jam in our shared memory supply closet. The final fix then is to change how we access that memory. We use something called sequential addressing, which makes sure that adjacent threads always grab items from adjacent shelves. And just like that, the traffic jam is gone. But we can do even better. We're not done squeezing performance out of this thing. The next trick is to have each thread do a tiny bit of work, just a single addition, while it's loading the data from the warehouse into the supply closet. It's like a 2-for-1 deal, and this simple change instantly doubles our efficiency. And for the grand finale, when there are only 32 numbers left to sum up, we unroll the loop. That basically means we write out all the commands by hand to get rid of any administrative overhead, making that final sprint to the finish line as fast as humanly possible. For years, this was it. This was state-of-the-art. It was this delicate, beautiful dance of software tricks, all designed to perfectly obey the hardware's strict rules. But then, the hardware itself decided to change the rules of the game. This massive change came in the form of warp shuffle instructions, first introduced in the Kepler architecture. And this was a total game changer. This feature lets threads inside a single warp read data directly from each other's registers, from their personal workbenches. Think about it. Instead of running down the hall to the supply closet, the soldiers can now just pass items directly to each other, hand to hand. It completely bypasses shared memory. And the result? It was a huge leap forward. An algorithm using these new warp shuffles is about 20 to 25% faster than even the most ridiculously optimized version using shared memory. It's the perfect example of hardware evolving to just solve a problem that software had been fighting with for years. And that really brings us into the modern era. This coevolution, this dance between algorithms and hardware, has gone into complete overdrive. Especially for the one workload that basically defines our time, matrix multiplication, which is the fundamental math at the heart of all modern AI. The story of doing matrix math on GPUs really mirrors our little reduction example, just on a much, much grander scale. Back in the software era, it was all about manually loading these small tiles of data into shared memory. Then, with the Volta architecture, we got tensor cores. These are specialized hardware units built just for doing tiny matrix math problems super fast. And now, with the latest Hopper architecture, we basically have a fully automated asynchronous hardware pipeline. So the Hopper architecture introduced two revolutionary ideas. First, there's WGMMA, which lets the tensor cores read data directly from the shared memory supply closet, cutting out an entire data movement step, a whole middleman. The second is the TMA, or Tensor Memory Accelerator. You can think of this as a dedicated conveyor belt that's constantly moving the next batch of data from the warehouse while the tensor cores are already busy working on the current batch.
And the result of this incredible new pipeline is just staggering. It allows matrix multiplication algorithms to achieve over 80% of the theoretical peak performance of the entire chip. Let that sink in. We are getting incredibly close to the absolute physical speed limit of the silicon, all thanks to this perfect marriage of software that understands the hardware and hardware built to accelerate the software.
So, we've looked at reduction, we've looked at matrix math, we've seen this incredible evolution. But what do all of these optimizations really have in common? What is the one true bottleneck that everyone, for decades, has been fighting against? This table really tells the whole story. For reduction, the bottleneck was warp divergence, and the solution was warp shuffles. For sorting, it was algorithmic complexity, solved by a new single-pass method. And for GEM, matrix multiplication, it was memory bandwidth, solved by the Hopper pipeline. Are you seeing the pattern here? Every single state-of-the-art solution is designed to overcome a limitation in how data gets moved around. And this right here is the ultimate takeaway. High-performance computing today isn't really about the speed of computation anymore. For all practical purposes, the math is free. The bottleneck is, and always has been, memory movement. The most successful parallel algorithms are the ones that are masters of logistics, the ones that are absolutely obsessed with minimizing those slow, expensive round trips to the global memory warehouse. This whole decades-long race has been about closing that gap between how fast we can compute and how fast we can move data. And as we get closer and closer to actually solving that problem, it leaves us with one last, really fascinating question to ponder. When data can finally move as fast as we can process it, what entirely new kinds of problems will we finally be able to solve?